Hey there, today I'm going to be doing a medium level difficulty problem. The title of this problem is called Memoize. So let's just jump into the instructions. Given a function, fn, return a memoized version of that function. A memoized function is a function that will never be called twice with the same inputs. Instead, it will return a cached value. You can assume that there are three possible input functions, sum, fib, and factorial. Okay, so just some initial thoughts here. So what it seems like they want is they want you to be able to only have to call upon the given input functions one time if you've encountered that value previously. So in other words, if they give you a certain set of arguments, if you encounter those arguments more than once, you know that you have already encountered that result previously, and you want to be able to access that stored value and return that value to prevent from you having to go into the input function again to retrieve the value that you've already encountered previously. So that means that I don't think we necessarily need to worry about what these functions do. We just need to be worrying about the values that are being given to us, because if we know that we've encountered two values previous, or a certain set of values previously, we've encountered that same value before, preventing us from having to use that function again. And that's exactly what's happening here in the examples, right? We have an input sum and the certain actions. Okay, so we're given two actions here, call or get call count, and we're being given values to go alongside with our function. So call, we're calling upon the sum function with the values of 2 and 2. Okay, well, the sum of 2 and 2 we know is 4, right? 2 and 2 is 4 once again. And now get call count, what this is doing, it's checking to see how many times we've called upon the input function. So if we're doing the problem correctly, this value should be 1, right? Because we've already encountered 2 and 2 previously. And that's exactly what this is, 1. And we move on to this new set of values, 1 and 2. Okay, we haven't encountered these two values before. The sum of 1 and 2 is 3, which is right here. Get call count should be what now? It should be 2, right? Because now we've encountered a new pair of values. So that's the gist of it. And as you can see, they give us an empty array here. And they just want us to, from the looks of it, just ignore that completely. That's fine. So I think we shouldn't have to go to the other examples. I think they summed that up pretty nicely. And it should become more clear as we get code in here. So let's move on to that section. All right. So this is the code that they give us. We have a regular function here alongside with an anonymous function, fn, the input function, with the arguments that were provided from the fn function. All right, so let's think about what we want to do here. All right, so we want to be keeping track of something, right? We want to be keeping track of how many times we've encountered a certain pair of values. So I think what would be a good idea for that is a dictionary, an object. And we can be storing these values within our object as a key. And we can be using, we can use certain functions with our objects, such as, I believe it's called hasOwnProperty, which can look for a certain value within a dictionary. And I think that will be pretty useful. So there's just some theoretical thoughts that I'm pretty sure is going to be useful. So let's just start off by creating our object. We'll call this our cache, and this will be just equal to an empty dictionary for now. And moving on to this portion of the code, what is our first objective? Well, we want to be storing a key into our cache object. And in order to do this, we need to just simply set the arguments that were passed in as a variable. So we'll call this, let's use the let keyword, that should be fine. And this will be called arguments, simply. Okay, so now that we have our key, we want to be able to populate our object with that key. And we can use an if statement for that. We can use the logical not operator to check and see if we cannot find the key within our object. And if we can't, then we can store that key inside of our cache object. So we can say if cache.has own property, and what are we looking for? We're looking for key. We're checking to see if we cannot find the key within our cache object. And if we can't, then what do we want to do? We want to store that key in our cache object. So then what we can do is we can say cache key is equal to the value of the input function. And so the context for our fn function here, we can just use this, that's fine. And for the arguments, we can use the arguments that are already given to us. And so what this is doing is that it's taking the value. It's taking the value of the function using the arguments that were given to us. So for instance, we have 2 and 2 here, right? We went over this. 2 plus 2 plus 4. If the arguments in this example are 2, then this would be equal to 4, right? We're applying the arguments 2 and 2 to our fn function. And this is stored as a value, 4, that gets stored as a key inside of our cache object. So now we have something to work with here. Now we can use this, right, to check and see if we've encountered this in the past. And we can go outside of our if statement here, and all we have to do at this point is simply return the key. And the reason for this is because now, if this if block turns out to be false, in other words, if we can find the key, if this if statement turns out to be false, if we can find the key, it means that all we have to do is simply return that key itself, which will prevent us from actually having to go into the fn function to retrieve the value again. So this should work. Let's try this first. Great. And let's submit it just to make sure it passes all the test results. And that worked. Awesome. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. And have a great day.